Oh, Anglo-American, I don't know about that, but I think that if we get this as a regular annual event, right, thinking about Liberation Day, how that panned out in terms of the I guess the Trumpian hubris meeting European, let's say, resilience. I think if we put that together with what happened this time, we can see the Europeans are gradually realizing that appeasement is not the right strategy. They're not yet in the field of instant maximal retaliation, but I do think that they are realizing that something has to change, something has to give. Now, the honest truth is that it's domestic pressures that will probably take precedent. We have a French election next year. That's going to be, I think, the real ticking clock, maybe even more than the sort of foreign policy showdowns we get with Trump. But we are getting there.
Right. Lionel, this was obviously a very active week in Davos, and we saw the United States effectively pull back on most of its, I guess, demands vis-a-vis Greenland. What do you think the leaders of the EU learned? It seemed like Mr. Macron came out pretty aggressive. Mr. Carney of Canada came out quite aggressive, but some others not so much. What did the Europeans learn, do you think?
Well, I think I do think a couple of things changed. Again, remember that from the American point of view, right, there was no loss, or at least from the kind of Trump entourage, there was no loss because they got Europeans' attention, right, quote unquote. The idea is you come in, you shake up the Europeans who are very slow moving, and you put it top of the agenda. I think, again, Europeans learn that if you just kind of wait for things to blow over, it doesn't always work. I think that in this case, you saw the European Parliament say that we're going to suspend these trade terms with the US. That's kind of new. Okay, it's true that France again put this trade bazooka on the table, and it didn't really get much traction internally within Europe. But I think Europe is learning. Europe is learning that basically, if you just keep giving in and saying, well, we'll take these compromised tariffs and move on, then the US administration will come back for more. I think sovereignty was the big red line here. And for the first time ever, I was hearing about the cost of inaction. Usually it's the cost of tariffs. Now I was hearing about the cost of doing nothing. So this is all a learning curve.
Lionel, Mark Carney, as we all know, made quite a splash, to say the least. I know Jacques Cartier, Alexis, Jacques Cartier is no relation to the jeweler.
Oh, I was wondering.
It's a distant relation.
Thank you.
Jacques Cartier, like the 16th century, and I actually recently in Montreal wandered through the Chateau Ramezay house, which goes back centuries. What is the linkage that you see, Lionel Laurent, of Mark Carney's Canada to the solicitations of Europe?
Well, I think it's that old phrase about the old order dying and the new order struggling to be born. I think the truth of the matter is that the bigger picture is this is a sort of temporary moment. We in Europe and in Canada, we don't actually know what's genuinely going to happen. And I think Trump, the only merit that I can see in the US approach is that clearly it is trying to make sense of the next order and at least trying to shape it. And I think we Europeans, I think our problem is that we are reluctant to get into what might come next. We are sort of stuck in the past, stuck in a certain type of trade first, soft power relationships and old historic alliances that are falling apart before our eyes.
But Lionel,
so I think that's the linkage.
I mean, I'm sitting there in a restaurant by Notre Dame a couple weeks ago. Everybody in the restaurant's retired, Lionel. I mean, you know, the stereotype that President Trump has is everybody retires at 53. They're living, you know, the X% of the budget that goes, say, in France to the government. I mean, it's way more than here. Do you see a genuine shift in those foundational ideas, or is it just going to be business as usual?
This is what I'm saying about the domestic pressures. I thought you were going to make a reference to the demographics. The demographics in Europe are even more important. That is obviously changing everything. That is real gravity. Demographic gravity will obviously force a change. Sadly, I think financial markets move quicker. They're going to force a change too, and that's going to happen in the next couple of years. So I agree. It's not thunder and lightning today, but something is definitely going to have to give soon.
Lionel, is there a belief in Europe that this America First approach that de-emphasizes historical allies and relationships, that's more than Donald Trump? That might, in fact, be a change in overall U.S. public opinion?
Absolutely. Again, I don't think Europe deserves prizes for foresight. Trump won was in 2016. That's almost 10 years ago. May I remind you that under the Biden administration is when France recalled its ambassador over the AUKUS issue, right? That was the first time France had ever done that. France realizes it. I hope other countries in Europe do too. This is sadly beyond just one president.
Lionel, the only reason we wanted you on, Paul and I were just curious, what are you going to do, Lionel Laurent, about hotel prices in Paris? What can you do?
I'm sorry to say that it's richly deserved, right? The tourism surplus or the tourism deficit, as long as Americans will see Paris as special. And I remember during the worst of the pension protests, when there was garbage piled high in Paris, all the restaurants were full of Americans like you. So keep coming, keep spending that money.